All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Zach Wilson's unceremonious time with the New York Jets has come to an end as he was traded today to the Denver Broncos. It was a disaster from the word go for the former second overall pick of the 2021 NFL draft, as in 3 seasons with the Jets. Wilson's record as a starting quarterback was just 12 and 21, while he threw 23 touchdowns and 25 interceptions, while he had a completion percentage of just 57%, while he was sacked 113 times. Now, this is a fresh start for Zach Wilson in Denver with Sean Payton. And honestly, it's a low risk proposition if you are the Denver Broncos. All it cost you was a sixth round pick for the former second overall pick. You're also giving up a seventh, and then you're splitting his $5.5 million salary this season with the Jets. For me, I think this will be Zach Wilson's last chance to salvage, to see what he can do in the National Football League. And at the end of the day, for me, I feel like this move came a year late for the Jets. I really do believe that the Jets needed to move on from Zach Wilson after the 2022 season because I think by that point it had become apparent that any future for him in the National Football League was not going to be with the Jets. They kept him around for 2023. The hope was, of course, for the Jets, well, you have Aaron Rodgers now, and Zach Wilson could possibly learn from the future Hall of Famer. But of course, all of that changed on that unfortunate night for Jet fans on Monday night to begin the season when Aaron Rodgers was lost for the season with an Achilles injury, and the Jets had to go back to Zach Wilson. And for the second consecutive year, the Jets had a playoff defense that was doomed by a bad offense with Zach Wilson under center. And I mean, we've seen him get benched multiple times over each of the last couple of years. And at the end of the day, the time was there that both quarterback and franchise needed to go in different directions. So one of the questions is going to be, why didn't things work out for Zach Wilson with the New York Jets? I'm going to put some of this on Zach Wilson, but I'm going to put a lot of this on the New York Jets. You go back to the 2021 NFL draft, and I'm going to touch on that whole draft a lot more before I bid farewell this evening. But nonetheless, there were 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round that year. Okay. And of those 5 quarterbacks, the Jets only worked out one, and that was Zach Wilson. And they were convinced that Zach Wilson was their guy at quarterback after watching him at his pro day at BYU on an indoor field. No offensive line, no pass rushers. You're just out there slinging the thing to your favorite receivers with scripted plays that are your favorite plays. And that was enough to convince the Jets to say, hey, you know what? Zach Wilson is our guy. Okay, fine. You take him second overall. You bid farewell to Sam Darnold, another quarterback who they took second overall a couple of years before that. And, bringing in a guy that early on a bad team is one thing, but you need a veteran quarterback around the youngster to kind of teach him the ins and outs. The Jets didn't do that. You need the coaching to put around the youngster to try to develop him. The Jets didn't do that either. And for me, the Jets have become a graveyard as far as developing young quarterbacks. And I think the biggest issue with the Jets, and I've talked about this before, and I will continue to say it, this part of it, I'm not going to put on the organization as much as I will the media in the New York area, as well as the fan base for the Jets, because they want to have something to go off of to build for the future. But the bottom line is everybody there's got to realize they're still waiting for the next Joe Namath at quarterback. That guy doesn't exist. And, right off the bat, you get a youngster in, they want to compare him to Joe Namath, this, that, and the third. No, you got to let that youngster go out there and be himself. I'm not going to sit up here and say that, what, Zach Wilson could have had a Hall of Fame career with the New York Jets. We don't know what he could have been, but I think with the right people around him, it could have been cultivated a little bit better than what we saw. Zach Wilson is a guy that I think he still needs a lot of work. And I think he's going to get better coaching in Denver with the Broncos, yes. But the other question is going to be how damaged is Zach Wilson from being shell shocked, because he was shell shocked in his 3 seasons with the Jets. So you look overall, and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. This 2021 quarterback class is looking like it could possibly be the worst ever. We had 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round that year, and of those 5 quarterbacks, only Trevor Lawrence is still with the team that drafted him. And right now, people have questions about Trevor Lawrence. Zach Wilson, of course, just traded by the Jets to the Denver Broncos. We saw Trey Lance taken right after Zach Wilson that year by the San Francisco 49ers, a 49ers team who traded up multiple spots to get to number 3 to take Trey Lance. They traded him last year to the to the Dallas Cowboys for a mid-round pick when it became quite apparent that Brock Purdy and not Trey Lance was their quarterback of the future. We saw the Chicago Bears that year trade up to get Justin Fields, and this past offseason, or this current offseason rather, has seen Fields traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers as the Bears have the first overall pick, of course, courtesy of the Carolina Panthers. But nonetheless, they have their eyes set on USC quarterback Caleb Williams. And then finally, Mac Jones, who was drafted by the Patriots that year. Of course, things did not work out for him there, and he was traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars by New England earlier this offseason for a sixth round pick as well. At the end of the day, like I always say with the quarterback position, especially the quarterback position, it comes down to what team drafts you and what is put around you as an organization to help you develop. Okay, so at the end of the day, we don't know what could have been for some of these guys and some of these teams. Sometimes some of these guys just went into bad situations. I'm not going to put it all on the players. I'm going to put some of it on the organizations as well. But this is what happens when a player goes to a bad organization and you don't put the proper personnel and the proper tools around the player to develop. Again, part of the blame on the player, but also part of the blame on the organization as well. So, getting back to Zach Wilson, how will things work out for him in Denver? Well, I'll tell you like this, he's going to get better coaching at the position, okay, from Sean Payton. And the thing is, he's not going to have the pressure on him in Denver like he did with the Jets. Why? Because this is year 2 for Sean Payton as the Broncos head coach. And he's basically stripped down this roster and he's starting over from scratch. And Sean Payton is going to attempt to build or rebuild the Broncos in his own image. So, with that said, and you're talking about Sean Payton stripping down the roster, there's really not a lot of expectations for the Denver Broncos right now heading into 2024. So, with that said, you're not going to have as much pressure on you if you're Zach Wilson in Denver that you would have in the New York area. I will also say this for the Denver Broncos. I know that after last season, the reports were out there that, Sean Payton could be content going into this current season with Jarrett Stidham as his starting quarterback. Well, Jarrett Stidham, of course, is the only quarterback, that got playing time last year for the Broncos that is returning after the team moved on from Russell Wilson. Not a lot of productivity out of Stidham during his time, of course, limited time as a Broncos starting quarterback. But the point I'm trying to make is it's a hard sell if you're Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos for your for your season ticket holders and everybody else going into next season, where you're going to say right now the three quarterbacks that we have on the roster are Ben DiNucci, Jarrett Stidham, and Zach Wilson. As far as trying to say to people, hey, you know what? Come out and support this team. So the point I'm trying to make is we've got the NFL draft, the first round of the draft this coming Thursday. The Denver Broncos pick at number 12. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do with that pick. Do they sit at 12, looking for a quarterback? Do they try to get a quarterback in round two, maybe round number three, or do they try to trade up? Because at the end of the day, I don't see the Broncos going forward with the current three quarterbacks that they have. Zach Wilson is a project. If Sean Payton can indeed truly fix Zach Wilson, and that's a big if, it's one of those. I don't think he's going to be able to fix him in one offseason. Zach Wilson has a future at least for 2024 with the Broncos as a backup, as he is truly indeed a development project. But at the end of the day, this was a move that had to be made. I said from last year, the Jets needed to move on from Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson needed to move on from the Jets. And the bottom line is Zach Wilson needed to go someplace with a strong quarterback room, or at least a head coach who knows how to work and develop young quarterbacks. And that's something that he's going to get right now with Sean Payton. So at the end of the day, this was a move that had to be made for all parties involved. The Jets could not absolutely afford to go into another season with Zach Wilson on their roster. Zach Wilson could not afford to go into another season as a member of the New York Jets. The fan base and the media had turned on him, and it was a disaster in the works. Okay, not even waiting to happen. It was a disaster already. So nonetheless, everybody has moved on. Clearly, if you're the Jets, you had to give up on a guy that you took second overall and only get peanuts in return. But at the end of the day, this is what happens when you don't do your due diligence. And this is what happens when you don't put the right people around somebody in order to develop. So at the end of the day, the Jets are moving on from Zach Wilson. Let's see if the youngster can find his, or not even resurrect, find an NFL career for himself in the Rocky Mountains. And let's see if Sean Payton can get something out of the former second overall pick. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.